20 years ago, in 2001, Lumix was created. And in our short history, we have boldly developed technology that was the first of its kind. Since then, we have released many innovative Lumix products, leading the industry in mirrorless cameras since 2008, bringing us to today. My name is Barney Sykes from Panasonic UK. I'm really excited to be here today to confirm Panasonic's commitment to the Lumix Micro Four Thirds system by announcing that we will be expanding our lineup of the Lumix GH series mirrorless cameras. In a short period of time, our GH cameras have revolutionized the world of filmmaking with interchangeable lens cameras, and we cannot wait to show you what we have been working on. This year we will introduce not one but two brand new GH cameras to the market. Please allow me to introduce the Panasonic Lumix GH5 Mark II. The new GH5 Mark II camera has been developed to meet the rapidly increasing demand for live video distribution, with built-in industry-leading wireless live streaming capability and high video performance. In addition to the GH5 Mark II, later this year we will introduce the highly anticipated flagship Panasonic Lumix GH6 camera, which will continue to set the industry's benchmark for video performance in interchangeable lens cameras. The Panasonic Lumix GH5 Mark II will enable a new generation of creators to join the Lumix GH series revolution. Our original GH5 was launched in 2017 and today remains a very advanced and capable mirrorless camera for filmmakers. The new GH5 Mark II will further enhance this video performance with easy-to-use wireless live streaming functionality that can be accessed via the Lumix Sync app. The GH5 Mark II camera also benefits from a whole host of further improvements, specifically designed with the filmmaker in mind. The GH5 Mark II will offer uncropped cinema 4K and 4K video in 10-bit 60p and 50p frame rates. In addition, HDMI output and simultaneous internal recording will be possible. Panasonic Vlog-L will come pre-installed on the GH5 Mark II, and we will also include our popular Cine-like D2 and Cine-like V2 recording styles. 4x3 anamorphic mode is included too, enabling filmmakers to express their creative individuality. In the anamorphic mode, we will include 10-bit 6K 30p, 25p and 24p, as well as a wide range of 4K anamorphic options, including 4K 60p and 50p. We are pleased to continue to offer our industry-leading image stabilization on the GH5 Mark II with 6.5 stop 5-axis dual IS. Panasonic Lumix already leads the market by offering a range of mirrorless cameras which feature truly unlimited recording time for video, and we're delighted to let you know that the GH5 Mark II will also feature this benefit, giving professionals the utmost confidence and reliability when shooting in the field. The GH5 Mark II will also feature our recognised splash, dust and freeze resistant weather sealing for further assurance. Panasonic is really proud to offer cameras with such high reliability that can be trusted by professional creatives. During the development of the GH5 Mark II, we have worked closely with three talented filmmakers from the USA, Matthew Sutherland, Emily Skye and Griffin Hammond. Now let's hear their first impressions.
Hi, I'm Griffin Hammond. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I had the opportunity to shoot a short film about two Chicago painters with the new Lumix GH5 Mark II. The camera performed wonderfully. I tried to shoot lots of color and texture, and it looked great. I love the in-body image stabilization, the long battery life, and the small form factor. And one of my favorite features, it's so simple, but I love that there is now a red recording frame. This is great for when you have the LCD popped out, you can see that you are recording, or for a newcomer to the camera, it is very clear that I'm rolling video. And I love that Vlog is now pre-installed on this camera. And as someone who shoots a lot of 4K 60, This camera could shoot 10-bit color internal, which is really nice.
What up, filmmakers? Emily Sky here. I go by She Wolf Films on all my social media platforms, and I had the privilege to be able to test out the GH5 Mark II by Lumix Panasonic. I use this camera for is more cinematic things, more adventures. So I paired it with the Atlas Orion Anamorphics, and I shot a mountain biking adventure, which was super cool. There was a lot of dust, a lot of wind, but this camera really withstood all of that. So I can honestly say this camera, just the dynamic range is amplified. Everything is wonderful. I'm a huge fan of this product, and I think you all will too.
Hi, I'm Matthew Sutherland from Tiva Cinematics and Matrimony Films, and I'm a Panasonic Lumix ambassador. I just finished making a cinematic film with a brand new GH5 Mark II. We shot it all in the new Cinelike D2 profile, and I wanted to show off the new upgraded in-body image stabilizer as well as the enhanced autofocus tracking, and Mother Nature gave us everything we could handle. I was shooting handheld in the surf, getting some surfers. I was on the slopes getting snowboarders, and it was phenomenal the way it handled it all. I've always loved the G series and how lightweight the lenses are, the bodies are, and how affordable it is for filmmakers. And this is absolutely no different. With the new color profiles, the new codecs it gives us, you're gonna love the GH5 Mark II.
Thank you, Griffin, Emily and Matthew. It's great to hear how some of the new features are being appreciated on the GH5 Mark II. Lumix has a strong reputation for significantly enhancing the features and functionality of our cameras via free regular firmware updates. We will continue this commitment to our customers, and before the end of the year, the GH5 Mark II will receive live streaming via USB tethering, RTP and RTSP wired IP streaming, and live view composite functions. Also, in line with this, we will be offering a free of charge firmware update to our existing GH5S camera to enable ProRes RAW recording via HDMI when connected to an Atomos Ninja 5. I'm pleased to say that we'll continue to follow our philosophy and implement advanced technology developments not only to new products but to existing products via firmware update to provide the most value to our Lumix users. I mentioned our commitment to Micro Four Thirds at the start of this presentation, and I'm delighted to announce today that as well as the GH5 Mark II and GH6, we will also expand our Lumix G series lens lineup. In 2019, we introduced the world's first f1.7 constant aperture lens, the Lumix 10-25mm. We can announce today that within 2021 we are planning to introduce a large diameter 25-50mm f1.7 lens under the Leica DG lens series. With this development, you will soon be able to shoot between 10-50mm or 20-100mm in 35mm equivalent with an f1.7 range using Lumix G Micro Four Thirds lenses. So far, we have covered the new GH5 Mark II and the new 25-50mm lens, and I believe you're eagerly awaiting further news about the GH6. What we can announce today is the GH6 is currently in development and will be here within 2021. The GH6 will be equipped with a new high-speed sensor and a newly developed Venus engine never been seen before on a Lumix camera. The GH6 will offer 422 10-bit cinema 4K 60p video with unlimited recording time. The GH6 will feature 10-bit 4K 120p high frame rate and variable frame rate recording. The GH6 will also come with 10-bit 5.7K 60p video recording. These features we are announcing today are just a small flavour of the new exciting GH6. This much anticipated flagship model of the GH line will deliver next generation video performance built to satisfy a wide variety of creative requirements redefining the possibilities for video recording in an interchangeable lens camera. Our engineers have been working tirelessly for many years, and the power of the brand new engine inside the Lumix GH6 cannot be underestimated. The GH6 is sure to not just meet your expectations, but surpass them. And we look forward to sharing further information in the coming months. Our Panasonic Lumix business will continue to innovate and challenge the boundaries of technical possibility. We will continue to introduce exciting new hardware and maintain our industry-leading reputation for ongoing firmware updates, providing maximum lifetime value for our loyal customers. Our Panasonic Lumix business is committed in our contribution to society, and we will support creative industries by continuously strengthening all areas of the Lumix business. Thank you for listening. Stay safe and stay well.
Panasonic.
All right, Matt. So that's a pretty exciting set of things coming out today, huh?
Yeah, I would say so. I hope some folks were surprised by what we're doing with the new lens. I hope they're satisfied with what we've announced thus far with the GH6. And frankly, you and I have been playing around with the GH5 Mark II now for several weeks. So we've got quite a bit of experience with the GH5 Mark II.
Yeah, just a little bit. So I see we have a packed house here today. For anybody that's new, this is an extension of obviously what we do on our weekly streams over here on the Lumix USA channel for Lumix Live. And this part right now that we're going to be kind of feeling out here, seeing what questions everyone has in the audience is what we do on a weekly basis over here. So if you want to see more of stuff like this, feel free to give us a subscribe, drop over, come chat with us each week. We know that all of you have tons of questions, and we can answer some questions. Obviously, regarding the GH6, it's just a development announcement and the specs that were released with this. So fortunately, we can't give you a ton more there, but if you have questions, tag at Lumix Cameras in the chat because it is going by like crazy. And I want to make sure that we can at least get to some of these for the next couple of minutes and address what you got. But in the meantime, Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, this is not going to be funny anymore, but the chat's going by like the Bitcoin price. So it's kind of just flying and flying and flying. So sorry, I had to get that out there. So go on.
So yeah, as we were saying, tag at Lumix Cameras if you guys have a question you want me to be able to see it, so I can see it on this side and Matt and I can address it. In the meantime, so there was a whole lot that was just announced, and I think there's some nuances with what's coming on the GH5 Mark II, which, full transparency for everybody, we will be doing this Thursday our normal Lumix Live on this channel on Thursday. We'll link to it after this video. We will be doing a very in-depth conversation on the camera for those that are interested in what it does different than the rest of the cameras. But Matt, could you give us a bit of a kind of overview of some of the cool things that you saw about the camera that people should know about?
Yes. Why don't we go in reverse?
Okay.
And kind of start backwards from what Barney discussed, which, by the way, I just want to make sure that I say this publicly. I thought Barney did a very good job on this presentation. I thought he was clear, succinct. It was easy to understand. He has me beat on charm and accent. So it clearly was a great choice to pick Barney for this. So there's something that was not mentioned in the GH6 announcement that I think we can talk about right now, because this is a global announcement. So for at least the U.S. market, Sean, should we let them know kind of what the target price is? Because it's in the press release.
Yeah. I know a lot of people were asking about the target price for both of the cameras, actually.
Yeah. So let's talk about with the GH6. The target price will be, we're targeting around or approximately $2,500 US. So as to what other countries will be charging, don't know, but absolutely 2,500-ish is where we're targeting. As for the GH5 Mark II, $16.99 and 99 cents will be its retail price here in the United States. So the nice thing here is that we'll have a sub $2,000 option, really a sub $1,700 option that's going to give people access to 4K 60p in 10-bit in both the cinema variant as well as the standard 4K variant with the GH5 Mark II. And obviously all those really cool streaming features to get that into this product. I think that's the thing you and I have noticed the most about it, has been how easy it is to use. But, you know, back to the GH6, when you think about the fact that that product is going to be offering 4K at 120 frames per second, you know, obviously we follow a lot of the rumor sites, and that was what people were expecting from the product. What I'm really excited for is that 5.7K at 60 frames per second. You know, that's from what I can see and from what I've read, that would be class leading when it comes to a combination of resolution and frame rate. So you're getting a nice high frame rate with really high resolution at the same time. So punch-in opportunities are going to be massive on that product, with some slow-mo functionality available as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to clarify, because a lot of people have been asking the same question here. Everything we announced today is Micro Four Thirds. So this is Micro Four Thirds.
Wait, what? What? We didn't walk away from it? Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. Man. Yeah.
Yeah. To make sure everybody knows. So for Sean and I, obviously this stuff's planned quite a while ago. We've always known we were going to be building on this system, and it's important for everybody to understand that you know, the GH series is really our baseline test bed. It's where we get the fastest sensor readout speeds, and so we can deploy these higher frame rates quicker into these products. And so for us, the GH6 is a necessary camera to come out with, and so. You know, at this point, I hope that this sets aside any further rumors about the product. And I see in the chat, we've had questions about it being, is it going to do photography? Yeah, of course, it's absolutely going to be a photography camera. The GH5 is a hybrid camera. It does both photography and video. Now, Sean and I have never seen it before, and you know, it's possible that there's going to be no photography in the product, but I think it's highly unlikely. People are asking about the autofocus on it, and yeah, I promise it will autofocus. I can guarantee that it'll have some autofocus, but you know, Sean and I just don't know what the autofocus is going to be. You know, there's a lot of secrets still being kept with the product, but at least now people understand we're going to have one by the end of 2021. So you'll get this product this year. It's going to have a new sensor and a completely new engine, which is awesome. So we're going to be seeing image quality improvements all the way around, and I think that's what's most exciting about it. Yeah,
and you know, it's funny because obviously we know, you know, with the announcement of a GH series camera, we know and listen to every single one of you that are you know, sounding off in the chat, which is awesome to see, by the way. You know, that everyone's had such a high anticipation for a GH6 camera. I mean, for the last year in Lumix Live, we've gotten at least, you know, 10 questions every single stream about, you know, hey, when's it coming? And I think it's important to know that, you know, with the GH5 Mark II, there's a lot of things that are updated in this camera and hardware changes that were made to that camera. Because let's face it, the GH5 came out, what, 2016?
2017.
2017.
January 2017 at the Consumer Electronics Show.
Yeah. So the hardware and the tech from that generation of the camera being built, you know, obviously time changes things. Time advances a lot of the technology. So, you know, you do eventually hit a point in a camera that got as many crazy firmware updates that the GH5 got, that you basically have to make hardware changes to do anything that's actually worthwhile updating. So, you know, just as we mentioned, we are going to be talking about specifically a lot of the changes on Thursday, so in 2 days, right here on this channel. So make sure to get subscribed, all that kind of stuff. That's my YouTube pitch. So, but there are some really cool additions that I think would be cool if you could maybe, or you know, we can kind of go into detail on this stream since we've got so many people that are still hanging around and are interested in it. We talk about linear autofocusing. linear manual focus on the GH5 Mark II. There's going to have to be some updates for some lenses to support it, but could you give a little kind of intro as to what that is for those that don't know, and why it's such a cool feature?
Yeah, so with the introduction of the GH5 Mark II, there's going to be a new feature that originated in the S-series cameras. Ordinarily, what we have in focus by wire cameras, which means the autofocus system is electronically controlling, or the manual focus is electronically being controlled. They have what's called a nonlinear focus motor, which means that, let's say that I turn it slowly, it may take me 100 degrees to go from macro to infinity or close to infinity. The faster I turn it, it may only take 47 degrees or 52 degrees to get from close to infinity. And so it's this invariability that creates confusion for video shooters in particular who want to be able to pull focus on their own. So what we've added now is the ability to set that to a linear throw, so that it's always the same rotation regardless of speed that you turn the focus wheel. Also, we'll be adding the ability to set the degrees of rotation. So you can choose if you want it to be 90 degrees, if you want it to be 210 degrees, if you want it to be 360 degrees, all of that can be done. Now, it's important to understand that the GH5 Mark II is not necessarily the only part that makes this happen. It's two parts, right? It's the camera body has to be able to do it, but then the lens also has to know that it's going to be asked to do this. And so there's going to be firmware updates that will be added to most of the lenses, certainly the lenses that would be most commonly used for professional applications. So I have the press release open here. I'm going to go ahead and read off the lenses just so everybody knows what we're going to be offering. So the lenses that'll get it will be the 8-18, the Leica 8-18, the X model 10-25, which is the f1.7 lens that we just announced a partner lens to with a 25-50. The 12-60, that's the ES model 12-60. The 50-200, which is the Leica 50-200. The 100-400 will get this feature. The X025, which is the 25 millimeter Leica, that will be getting this feature. The ES200, so that's the Leica 200 millimeter. The 12-35. And the 35-100, that's the second generation ones, not the first generation ones. The 12-60, the standard Lumix kit lens that we offer on some of our cameras will also get this functionality, as well as the 45-100 and the 100-300. So Sean, I know you're incredibly disappointed that 8 millimeter fisheye is not getting this linear focus function, but I guess we'll have to keep pushing because I know how much you shoot that 8 millimeter fisheye lens and you need to be able to throw focus.
Man, just dashing my hopes, huh? I want to address a couple questions, or a couple comments about some of the stuff in the chat. One, don't spam your questions, because if you spam your questions, it'll trigger the auto thing to throw you in timeout for a little bit of time. We do see it if you ask it. People are asking about about a G9 update. We don't have any information about anything other than what was announced on the stream today. So I appreciate you guys asking about, hey, is this camera going to get an update? What about this one? But just to kind of hopefully address a little bit of that, unfortunately, we don't have an answer for you there. The other question I wanted to comment about is, where did it go? About the RAW over HDMI for the GH5S. There's some clarity that I think some people are maybe linking two things together. The GH5S is getting RAW over HDMI to the Atomos Ninja 5. The G9 is not. It's just the GH5S. So hopefully that clears that up.
Some of that confusion I think is coming because in the press release we've announced firmware updates for both the G9 and the GH5S. And so both cameras got firmware updates today. The G9 gets all the autofocus enhancements we're putting into the GH5 Mark II, which would have first been seen by people in the BGH1 actually. So effectively, we needed an architecture change in the GH5 to be able to give it the autofocus functionality that is offered currently in the BGH1. So that architecture change had to happen in the GH5 Mark II. Fortunately, the G9 and the GH5S had that architecture already in it. So we're going to go ahead and give you those new autofocus enhancements in the GH5S as well as the G9. They'll get the frame markers for like social media framing or cinematic framing, like a 239 framing option if you want that. The ability to do vertical or horizontal embedding of the data. So if you're filming vertically, it'll automatically embed that, or you can turn that off if you'd like. So those things are being added to both the G9 and GH5S. The GH5S will be getting RAW over HDMI, and that just makes sense with the BGH1 having a similar sensor to what's in the to what's in the GH5S. We had already done RAW on the BGH1, so it makes perfect sense to port that over to the GH5S. So yeah, that hopefully that adds some clarity as to why we did what we did.
Yeah, and it's I think again that kind of big point that like, look, the GH5 received so many firmware updates, and same with the G9. But from early in the days, we knew that the G9 and the GH5S had more features than the GH5 did because they were released after. Their development cycle starts after the GH5, so they were able to use different hardware. And we've pushed for years, pushing as many updates as we can on a camera before having to make a major shift to it. And just like we said a few minutes ago, at some point you have to make a hardware change to do anything that actually impacts what people want in a camera.
I think we had effectively reached sort of the development limit of meaningful firmware updates in the GH5, and so now with this new architecture, we can keep it fresh with the G9 and GH5S. I also think it's exciting because we've done some other updates to the camera. We've added a higher resolution LCD screen. Not that the resolution's that much bigger, but what's really cool is it's so much brighter. You and I have both shot the camera outdoors, and we can absolutely appreciate that much brighter LCD screen that's on the back of the camera. Some things that are probably not as easy to recognize from the press release. The USB port is now powered. So you can power the camera over USB. You can charge your batteries inside the camera. And we're giving you that battery we first introduced with the S5. So you're getting a higher capacity battery. And the nice thing is your old batteries will still work in the GH5 Mark II. And the charger that comes to GH5 Mark II will charge both batteries, whether they're the older GH5 batteries or the newer GH5 Mark II batteries. So those improvements have been added to the product. The viewfinder is now 120 frames per second. So for photographers, they're going to really enjoy that feature. And I think some of the firmware updates that we're going to be doing are interesting too.
Which we will cover on Thursday.
Okay, so I won't get into
going to give you all a hook. For in-depth details and stuff like that, we're going to talk about that on Thursday. But we're getting a couple people asking if we can show the camera, which I can do that here. So let me just jump to my main camera here. So there's the GH5 Mark II. My version is not a completely finished version, so there's some just grip material difference here. But you guys can see it is pretty much, for all intent and purposes, it is a GH5 chassis, just with a little Mark II there. A couple changes up here. You've got a different red record button up top, and you have a new button up here, which we can probably talk about today and kind of explain that instead of making people wait, because this is a group that's actually really gonna probably be very interested in that particular feature. So. Do you want to give a rundown of what that button does while I pull up some more questions?
Yeah. So that was an old function. That was the function button on the GH5. And they've developed an option now where it becomes a color profile button, which, initially I think you and I looked at it and we were like, well, what's the benefit here? And then the first time you push it, you realize it immediately takes you multiple pages into the menu and get you the full access to whatever picture profile you want and all of the control adjustments for your hue and saturation and sharpness. So it's a very fast way for you to change color profiles. And I find myself using it quite often, actually. So I think it was a really good decision. And don't worry, if you don't want to use it for that, it's still a function key. So you can just long press it and you can change it to whatever you'd like. But I'm a big fan of that button and that change that they've added to it.
Yeah. Commenting, a couple people someone commented here, red button, what everyone wanted. Hey, minor little things. But some people were asking here, when is the GH5 Mark II going on sale? I know that it's going to depend on the region that you're in as to when it actually starts shipping. I can't remember. Do we have the date on that for the US at least, Matt?
I would say that, the goal would be that the product should be in people's homes sometime in July. I think that's the safest answer to be able to give. And as Sean has mentioned, there's going to be some variance depending on the region that you're in.
Yeah. What's the other one here? Can you comment on LCD screens as to whether the number of dots refers to actual pixel or subpixel?
Wait, no. I'm sorry. Wait on that. Peter Paul Chato, your background is not pulsing. You're clearly using autofocus. What camera are you using? And then he threw a name out there. That's in the chat right now. Sean, what camera are you using right now for your autofocus, since it worked so well on your GH5 demo or your GH5 Mark II showing?
That's the BGH1.
Okay,
I've been using it for a year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the autofocus that will be in the GH5 Mark II and the GH5S and the G9.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been using the BGH1 box camera for this stuff with the 12mm Summilux. So there you go.
Sorry, what was the question you were asking? Sorry, when I saw that come up, I had to hit it right away. So
no, that's cool. 12-bit or 10-bit RAW files on the GH5S update. So that is for this camera, GH5S. The RAW over HDMI is going to be to an Atomos Ninja 5, and that is 12-bit RAW to
that's correct.
The Ninja 5. So hopefully that answers that question.
And then no updates to the internal 10-bit.
Correct.
So, and then someone asked what camera I'm using. I'm on a BGH1 as well.
Yeah. So
Sean and I we're addicted to BGH1s. We absolutely love using them for this stuff. So
it truthfully makes a lot of this stuff so much easier, just because I got all the control on the computer to be able to switch angles and not have to switch it in here, because we use OBS for this stuff. So, let's see. Ton of questions about things like autofocus and stuff like that in reference to a GH6. Unfortunately, we don't have any additional answers to give you guys on GH6 outside of what was specifically given. Which of our cameras would you say have the best dynamic range?
Well, that's gonna be the S series, whether it's the S1H or the S1 or S5. Second place, the S1R would probably be right in there with the S1 and S1H, and then it would be the box camera, clearly.
Yeah,
at least a full stop more than what we have on the GH5S right now.
Yeah. Let's see here. What are the questions we got here? Sorry, there's a lot of duplicate questions, everybody, so I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not duplicating answers over and over and over and over again. Can you comment on IBIS? I assume that you're talking about the GH5 Mark II, because we did not comment anything on a GH6. The GH5 Mark II is an updated in-body stabilization system with the dual IS system that we have. So it's a big bump up over what you're seeing in a GH5, which was already phenomenal to begin with. You're much closer in line with a G9.
Yeah, I would say you're very close to a G9. That's one of the benefits of going to the new architecture of the GH5 Mark II, is we can kind of pick the best of the solutions for the other cameras and put it in there. As much as you and I love the S1H and its stabilization system, I think you and I would both agree the G9 is better than the S1H, especially for video stabilization. Well,
yeah, and again, to go back to that point, it's one of the reasons why Micro Four Thirds is still such a core part of the offering that Panasonic Lumix makes, is that the smaller sensor gives us a ton of advantages over current state full frame technologies. So faster readouts, much easier time to manage and stabilize the sensors because they're smaller, you have less mass to be moving around, and the kits can generally be smaller. Obviously, when you look at the vast majority of lenses that are on the market, there's such a wide shift these days in what you can get. But if you want a shallower depth of field, you want something that's relatively compact. I mean, we've got, our 15 millimeter 1.7 that I carry typically on my GH5 or now the GH5 Mark II, and it's an ultra small kit. And I know that I'm getting like 6.5 stops on the Mark II body with a non-stabilized lens like that. So you've got a ton of flexibility there. Let's see, what other questions?
Somebody's asking, will we get electronic IS on non-stabilized sensors? I think you're asking on probably like the BGH1 or the GH5S. And we have already an EIS system in those cameras. So, we already do that.
Yeah. Let's see here. What else do we got? We'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll probably wrap it up for today. Because we're starting to see just like a lot of duplicate questions. And guys, unfortunately, like we said, there's some questions that we just can't answer, so I apologize. But we will be doing a very in-depth conversation on the Mark II on Thursday. So this Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have a link for that video in the chat, so everyone can take a look at that. Let's see here. For running gun, would you recommend an S1 or a GH5 Mark II? That's coming from Q2 Japan. So it's going to kind of depend on your style. If you're looking for ultimate compact, small form factor, lighter weight, and you want to be maybe a little more nimble, then hands down the GH5 Mark II. If you're not so worried about size and weight, or just kind of visibility of you with a camera, then the S1's a solid option, especially after the firmware update that came with the SFU2. So it kind of really just goes to which one you're kind of looking at as an overall system. I think both of them are going to be amazing for you.
I do also think that the question would have to be asked, because you said it's from Japan. Ultimately, what frame rate are you planning on shooting your content? I think, Sean and I are Americans. I don't know if you could tell. But the fact is that in the U.S. and in a lot of European countries, it's very common for people to want to shoot at a 24 frame because our brains have been taught that looks more professional. But in your country, in Japan, a lot of times they want to shoot at higher frame rates. And so if I needed a higher frame rate, like a 50p or 60p, I may actually choose the GH5 Mark II over the S1 because it's going to give me the full sensor width for 60 frame content. So you just have to look at what your needs are and what your frame rate is that you're going to broadcast at.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so much more that goes into getting yourself, what camera fits perfect for your outlet. For a lot of people, a full frame sensor's not worth the hassle, the weight, the size for their particular style of work. Like for these kinds of events, live streams like this, we started this whole Lumix Live thing using the full frame cameras. We used an S1H for it, and it was cool. We got to throw in with the whole, completely obliterate the background and it's cool. But after a while, it starts to just kind of look meh. In my opinion. So jumping back to the Micro Four Thirds, I mean, we started with a GH5 when we first moved back to using the Micro Four Thirds system, and it has just been solid. And then advancing in with the BGH1, which is still going to stay as my live stream camera because the control, the PoE, the Ethernet, all that kind of stuff just makes it a heck of a lot easier. So I really like it.
So there was a question that popped up which asked about what's going to be better in low light, the GH5 Mark II or the GH5S. And the GH5S is still going to be a better low light camera than the GH5 Mark II. So I just want to make sure we got that answered because you had asked about it. Not you, Sean, but somebody in the comments had asked.
Yeah, so what I want to pull here, let me get this link here. So for everybody, we will be doing... let me see here. I just saw a question come by. Okay. Well, in the chat, I just dropped the YouTube link. This is the link that we're going to be using for Thursday. So this Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time to actually go into in-depth about the GH5 Mark II, so you guys can ask. We can actually spend a lot of time talking about the streaming feature, the major differences, but the question that came across, Matt, is we shifted, obviously, some of the color profiles on the Mark II. We're using Cinelike D2 and Cinelike V2, as well as it has Vlog L. Could you go a little bit of detail into what Cinelike D2 is and why it's kind of a really cool addition to this camera?
Yeah, so we introduced those picture profiles with the S1H, and it was when we got in closer contact with the development team for the VariCam. The goal was to try to make picture profiles that could directly match profiles that were in the VariCam. And so that Cinelike D and Cinelike V version 2 are much closer approximations to what you get in a VariCam. And it really ushered in a new era of color science for Panasonic. So you're getting that color science improvement in both Vlog as well as the benefits that you would get in Cinelike V and Cinelike D2. And you'll notice color profile improvements across the board in the camera.
Yeah. Let's see here. One other question. How do I keep the room so tidy? My wife would kill me if I did not keep it clean.
So there was a question, will we accept Dogecoin for the GH6? And Andrew, if you're going to give me the Charlie bit my finger meme, absolutely, I'll accept Dogecoin for a GH6. I'm very disappointed I can't watch that video anymore on YouTube. That was like my daily affirmation.
It'll show up eventually. Come on. Let's see. Any release date for the GH5S firmware update for RAW? We don't have the updates, the dates yet. Obviously, we will let everyone know as soon as possible. But yeah, it'll be soon. Other people just confirming.
So there's a question about Vlog. Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
In terms of color space, and this thing's going by fast, so I got to kind of roll it back here.
Yeah.
In terms of color spaces, as is the Vlog cover for the most used color spaces, 709, DSAG P3 Rec 2020. Does Vlog cover all spaces? If not, what is the coverage percentage for each space mentioned? Okay, so there's like a general question here, so let's kind of address it.
Yeah.
So Vlog is beyond Rec 2020 because of the gamut. Now, not every one of the cameras will cover that. Obviously, S1H does, the BGH1 does, because it has to in order to be able to work within post workflows. Sean and I have not tested the GH5 Mark II to find out what its coverage is, but we would expect it to be right at where we're at for Rec 2020. It should be very close to that. It's possible that it is actually covering out to the full V gamut, but we just don't know yet until Sean and I get a chance to test it. But in general terms, once you have that Rec 2020 color space, you can also use something called an IDT, because if we're covering V gamut, we can use an IDT, which will then expand the color primaries to the ACES color space, which is even bigger than Rec 2020. So some of our cameras can do this, some of them can't. It just depends on the model. I can confirm BGH1 and S1H. And obviously any of the S series, because they're all on the same V gamut color profile.
Yeah, exactly. For a couple of people asking, the GH5 Mark II is using dual SD cards, UHS-2 spec, so V90 cards. Not much has changed on that side on this camera. As far as the GH6 goes, we have no answer or no update on what cards are in that. It's just not part of the information that we released to everybody. Other question, will GH5 batteries work in the GH5 Mark II? Yes, in the Mark II, the GH5 batteries will work in the GH5 Mark II. The battery well is designed to accommodate both. Your charger, as Matt pointed out before, the original charger for the BLF19, which is the original GH5 battery, will not work with the new batteries because it doesn't have the second set of SLED points. So
the key is that you'll use your GH5 Mark II charger to charge all your older GH5 batteries and the new GH5 Mark II battery.
Yeah. Let's see here. Ben's asking, does the BGH1 have dual ISO? Yes, it does. And often I'm shooting at the higher ISO range, so I don't have to blind myself with these two Elgato key lights. They're on like 5% right now.
So Ben Fox, does the BGH1 have dual ISO? It absolutely has dual ISO. 100%.
Do you guys use Panasonic beard shavers? Looks fresh as always. Which ones do you use? I use our Arc 5.
Panasonic beard shaver. I actually use one of our beard shavers. I use the beard trimmer.
Yeah.
And then we have a really nice body grooming trimmer that I use for the back of my neck because my wife gets sick of shaving it.
Yeah. Let's see here. Any other last questions here? We're gonna call it soon here. Because again, we're getting a lot of
will the new battery power the GH5? Absolutely. It'll absolutely power your GH5. So it's all cross compatible, and you just get more recording time with the new battery on a GH5.
Yeah, and that's the same for the G9 too. So anybody that's using the G9, the BLK22, so that's the new battery, is backwards compatible on those cameras. They got a firmware update end of last year, I think, that added support right when we launched the S5. So basically going forward, that's probably the battery that you're going to want to get for those cameras. And the new charger, it's not a sled type charger, it's a top drop down charger that's USB-C port into it. So it's a little more universal across the board for everybody.
There's a couple of interesting questions here I want to get to.
Yeah, go for it.
One from All Things Film. By the way, thank you, All Things Film. You've had some very interesting questions today. Does the BGH1 have the same autofocus as the S5? Kind of. So there's a lot of the same enhancements that the S5 got, but the BGH1 has the added benefit that its sensor can do 60p readout speeds all the time, not just in a cropped region. So it actually does better for autofocus, more consistently does a better job with autofocus than the S5. At least that's my experience with it. I don't know, Sean, what your thoughts are. And this is for video. For photography, they all work really well for photography. But on the video side, the benefits would lean towards the BGH1. And then somebody else has asked about RAW. They had a RAW question that I wanted to briefly cover. And everything just kind of moving faster in the chat than I'm used to. I'm slow. Yeah. I'm old, guys. This is from John Aldred. I have a question. Will RAW over HDMI support the Blackmagic Video Assist 12G some point for B-RAW recordings, or are we stuck with ProRes RAW on the Atomos Ninja 5? So obviously we don't know for sure which cameras are going to be able to do B-RAW in the future for us, or if we'll add it. It is important to note that the S1H did get an update that added the ability to record with the Blackmagic 12G Assist recorders. So that camera can absolutely do Blackmagic RAW or ProRes RAW for Atomos recorders.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm looking to see if we got any really good questions that I missed. We've had a lot of really good questions so far. But I also have to figure the questions that we actually can answer, because I don't want to be, go ahead.
What's your go-to lens for production Lumix cameras? I think Sean's on an 8-18 right now.
No, it's the 12 millimeter Summilux.
Okay, so on the 12. I'm on the 40. I'm on the 42.5. Actually, the f1.7 42.5. If you're asking kind of what I use generally, it used to be the 12 to 35 and 35 to 100. I've switched now to the 12 to 60 and the 50 to 200. I use those an awful lot. And then for shots like this, I always use a prime lens, something I can shallow the depth of field because I've got a real boring backdrop. So I want to shallow it out.
One of the other questions here is, can you tell us about the live streaming function of the GH5 Mark II that you can add overlays onto it? I can tell you right now that you can't add overlays onto it the way it works, but come back on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to actually go through in depth on that particular feature. Link was in the chat. Yeah, definitely worth tuning into. It's going to be very cool. Yeah, you actually have to see it to see how easy it is to use. Yeah, definitely. Do you plan to add USB-C RAW recording on the new GH series? Don't know. Don't have any insight as to whether or not that is something that's coming, being planned, or whatever. But that's kind of the nice advantage of all the comments that y'all are putting in here. We get some pretty good feedback from everybody that our team in Japan sees. To kind of help guide what should be put into the cameras and what can be put into the cameras over time. So, Sean, there was an interesting question from
I think it's Roru Hui. I know I butchered your name and I apologize. But you're asking about can we add the live streaming functions to the GH5 so we can do some live streaming from that product? You know, obviously Sean and I are not engineers designing the product, but we had to do an architecture change in the GH5 Mark II. I'm going to assume that that architecture change helped us to be able to accomplish the live streaming functions that it has. So I'm never going to say never to something like that in a GH5, but I think it's highly unlikely.
Yeah. Let's hear. When can we expect the next set of details, specs on the GH6? Your guess is best as mine at this point right now. We obviously have what we are allowed to talk about and what was released. So yeah, you're just gonna have to make sure you're tuning into all the different social channels, and you'll get updates as to when things come out. So
hey, you know, sports betting is legal in the United States. You guys can go ahead and start a pool and, you know, pool your money together.
No.
No. Okay.
We do not encourage that on this channel. All right. Let's see here. All right. This is a good one. Can you make the sync app full screen capable? This is coming from Corey. You can. That was actually something that was added in some of the previous updates. It's all going to depend on what OS version you're running on your mobile device. So first step, make sure that your Lumix Sync app is updated, and you're going to want to do that anyway, because that's going to be one of the things that we're going to talk about on Thursday with the Mark II and the streaming side. You're going to want to make sure that the app is updated and make sure your OS is updated. It adds the ability, so like if I rotate the screen on older models, you would actually tap a button and you could go full screen with it. But it does have full screen. Oh, okay.
Wait.
What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say,
make a snarky comment. It's not anything
go ahead.
important.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good. It's too late. The moment's passed.
What are the biggest differences between the GH5S and the GH5 Mark II? Tune in on Thursday at 2 p.m. and I will get you guys all of the answers. Basically, everything everyone's asking in here is also going to help me make sure that I don't just cover the things that I think are important, or that, you know, a couple of us that have been working with the camera think are important. I want to make sure that I get you guys the proper information, so that you have, you know, answers to the questions that you're asking. Let the marketing team know the frequent update is engaged. Otherwise,
That's why we do frequent
question
firmware updates, actually, Alan.
Yeah, so the frequent updates that we're doing here, the fact that, you know, that we're doing Lumix live every single week on Thursdays at 2 p.m. We've been doing it for the last year, actually a little over a year at this point. We are constantly in communication with the community. So if you guys join in on those Thursday events, it's a lot. You have all of these opportunities to ask us questions. We have different guests come on, things like that. All right. With that, I'm going to call it today, Matt. We've had a whole bunch of stuff, unless there's a last question you see you want to answer.
No, I appreciate everybody attending this. And as Sean mentioned, these happen every Thursday. There's a lot of different topics that Sean covers. He occasionally has me on to break up the monotony, I guess. I have no idea why he has me on at all. But yeah, feel free to come back every Thursday. We run these. We'll have one this Thursday. If you want more in-depth information about the GH5 Mark II, that's the session to check out.
Yeah. So with that, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited about the future of Micro Four Thirds for Panasonic Lumix. Like we said, this is an amazing time. If you're a Micro Four Thirds user, there's going to be obviously more info comes out over time. So definitely get yourself registered on the different groups for Panasonic, all of our different social channels, to get the most up-to-date information in your region. And with that, look forward to seeing those of you that want to join us on Thursday at 2 p.m. Link was dropped in the chat. Link's already active on the Lumix Cameras channel, and we'll see you then. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.